Welcome back to Bonkers for Borough, and what a busy summer it has been. 11 new signings coming into the club, 8 of them coming on a permanent basis, with plenty of outgoings as well. But has it been a successful summer for Middlesbrough? What do you make of it? I've run through every deal that Middlesbrough have done this summer to give my take on whether Middlesbrough are better or worse than they were at the start of the campaign. Here we go. Among the first players to leave Middlesbrough this summer was Johnny Howson. Now, Howson got to the end of his contract at the end of last season. He enjoyed a wonderful last couple of months of the last campaign. He'd spent a lot of time injured throughout the season, but he came back and was really proved his quality during the final weeks of the campaign, showed his leadership and his experience in what was quite a difficult time for Middlesbrough, really, putting some solid performances in central defence. And I know that a lot of supporters were really keen for Howson to stay at the club, to extend his contract by a further 12 months, with it due to expire. Now, it took a little while for Middlesbrough to make the decision, but ultimately the decision was made for Johnny Howson to part company with the club. He's since moved back to Leeds United. He's taken up a player coach role there as part of their under 21 side, where he's going to be playing for them and offering his wisdom to some of the up and coming players at Elland Road. So it was a decision which was disappointing at the time. You've got to say, I think, with the benefit of hindsight and the moves that Middlesbrough have made in the transfer market, you can see that it was perhaps one that made sense for all parties. But undoubtedly, Johnny Howson will go down as a Middlesbrough legend, someone who did so well in the last few years, and the reception that he got when he came back to the Riverside ahead of the match with Sheffield United was just a testament to just how highly he's regarded. So certainly the right decision, one which a move which was, in my opinion, the correct decision to make. Once again, that's with the benefit of hindsight, and hopefully Johnny Howson can continue to do really well with Leeds United and provide a bit of inspiration to the next generation coming through with Leeds United. Anthony Dijksteel was another player who left Middlesbrough at the end of last season. He was someone who probably enjoyed his best season with Middlesbrough last term. He was someone who, even going back to last summer, seemed like someone whose future at the club was very much in question. He was someone who could have potentially moved on last summer for a transfer fee. There was always a lot of speculation about him and whether Middlesbrough would choose to sort of pull the trigger and get rid of him and to get him off the wage bill and that sort of thing. But he enjoyed some really impressive performances last term. At the start of the campaign, he played against Leeds United, did very well, scored that wonder goal, and then ultimately did so well for Michael Carrick's side throughout the campaign, and nailed down that right back spot for quite a lot of matches, and put in some really solid performances, a couple of goals to boot as well. So it was a really good campaign as far as he was concerned. It did lead some people to question whether Anthony Dijksteel could potentially be offered a new contract with the club, but ultimately Middlesbrough decided not to offer him that contract extension. He's since moved on to a new club in Turkey for a new adventure. Certainly something that he deserves. He is a really good professional, someone who did well for Middlesbrough, but he does want to be playing regular first team football. And I think with the business that Middlesbrough have done in the transfer market in terms of incomings and the arrival of Callum Britton in particular, it was always unlikely that he was going to play much football this term. So I think the decision not to renew Anthony Dijksteel's contract was a good one, and hopefully he can really kick on with his new adventure in Turkey. Josh Coburn was another player who left Middlesbrough fairly early on in the summer, really. He spent last season on loan with Millwall and did really well at the Den. He looked like a perfect fit for Alex Neil's side in South London. Did very well last season. A lot of Middlesbrough fans were thinking that potentially he could come back to the club, show what he was capable of during pre-season, and then coming into this term to show that he was ready and capable of being the main man in Middlesbrough's attack. But ultimately, Josh decided that he did want to move on. He wanted that new start, that clean slate, and moving to Millwall was the perfect opportunity to do exactly that. As I said, he did so well last season. He had a really good connection with Alex Neil, who knew exactly how to get the best out of him, and that's been proven this season. He's doing really well with them once again. Middlesbrough got a good transfer fee for him. It was around about £5 million that Middlesbrough attracted for him, which was decent money for a player who was probably going to be second or third fiddle in Middlesbrough's attacking ranks. So a good deal for Middlesbrough once again, a good move for Josh Coburn, and someone who I think will go on to prove himself in the next couple of years as one of the top strikers in the Championship. The first incoming of Middlesbrough summer, it was one that fans had to wait for a little bit, but that was Callum Britton. He was facing a bit of an uncertain future at Blackburn. He had a year left in his contract at Ewood Park and had made it quite clear that he didn't want to stick around. Middlesbrough had been admirers for a little while. There was a bit of to and fro for a good few weeks. It took a little while to get this one over the line, but ultimately Middlesbrough did strike a deal to sign Callum Britton. The fee was worth around about £3.5 million, I believe, to bring him to the Riverside Stadium. And I think based on the first few weeks of the season, you can see exactly why Middlesbrough was so keen to bring him in. He's a player who's got great energy. He's been really good defensively, but also offers a huge amount going forward as well. He's been a real all-round threat in that right back, that right wing back role. And I think the best thing that you can say about him is he just doesn't really attract too many headlines, but in a really good way. He's someone who is a really solid performer, someone who puts in a 7 or 8 out of 10 performance each week. I know the season's very early on, and so there's going to be some big tests to come as the campaign unfolds, but he's a really good, solid championship level defender, someone who you can really trust in that back line. And I think last season in particular, you saw too many people within Middlesbrough's team who, yes, they were capable of putting in 8 or 9 out of 10 performances, but there was also a few that were putting in 3, 4, 5 out of 10 displays too often. It was far too inconsistent. And I think someone like Callum Britton was a really good signing, someone who was really solid, comes in, you know exactly what you're getting from him. He had real quality, both in attack and defence. And for me, he's been a really, really good signing and a perfect addition as far as Rob Edwards is concerned. Alfie Jones, he's another one who fits into that exact same category, someone who has just slotted into the team so seamlessly. He arrived from Hull City during pre-season. He made his debut at Ibrox against Rangers. It was a match that I was in contention, not in attendance for. I wasn't in contention at all. He came on. He came on as a second half substitute. And I remember the first thing that he did was he absolutely clattered one of the other Rangers forwards from behind, and it was just a really solid introduction from a player who just knows what he's about, knows what his skills are, and he was someone who just immediately made that impact on Middlesbrough's defence, and he hasn't really looked back. He's been a real staple in Middlesbrough's defence so far this term. Three centre-backs that Rob Edwards has been playing with Alfie Jones, Dale Fry and Luke Ayling has looked really, really solid this season. It's been such a great unit in the team. And for Alfie Jones, the fact that he's been able to come in, prove himself to be so capable in that left centre back role has been brilliant. It was a really good signing for Middlesbrough. Someone who, as similar with Callum Britton, he just looks like he's been at Middlesbrough for a number of years. He's just slotted in so seamlessly. Really solid championship level player, and someone who I've been really, really impressed with in the early stages of the campaign. He might not be the most glamorous signing. He might not be as exciting as some of the lads that we're going to talk about in just a little bit. But my word, has he made a big difference at the back, because Middlesbrough's defence was leaky last season, and the arrival of Alfie Jones and Callum Britton in particular have done wonders, in my opinion, for really shoring up that defence. Abdoulaye Kante, this was a really exciting signing when it came off. It was a player who, admittedly, I knew very, very little about before he signed. It was only really when you saw him in action for the first time that you kind of got the idea of what he was likely to be about. He seemed to win over supporters very, very quickly. He did a video on Middlesbrough's social media channels where he was said, "Hello, Middle fans," and I think it was that which was quite endearing. I think a lot of supporters immediately just thought, "Oh my God, I absolutely love this guy," in terms of what he was like off the pitch. And then it was during his debut performance against Deportivo, and then on the opening weekend against Swansea, where he showed exactly what he was capable about. He's busy, he's positive, he's ambitious in midfield. The amount of interceptions that he makes is absolutely incredible. The work that he puts in, the yards that he covers, it's just absolutely brilliant to see. Now, he is someone who is very, very young. He is someone who is going to be a bit of a work in progress. I think we've seen that in the last couple of weeks with Rob Edwards sort of purposefully trying to keep him I guess to sort of like manage his game time a little bit. We haven't seen him playing every single game, but I think that's probably the right thing to do. He is adapting to life with a new club in a new country and a new league, and we will be adapting to life on Teesside as well. So I think it's a signing that Middlesbrough fans will need to be patient with. But I think certainly in the first few weeks of the season, we've seen some very exciting things from him, and I would love to see him do really, really well as the other months progress during this season. I think he could potentially be a really important player for Middlesbrough moving forward. Just needs a little bit of time to adapt. And I think once he's done that, I think we'll see exactly what he's capable of. And for me, I think he's got a really, really high ceiling, and he could be the next star of this Middlesbrough team. Rav van den Berg, we're talking about the next star of the Middlesbrough team. He was someone who sort of filled that role a couple of seasons back, and it was quite a similar kind of deal to the one that saw Abdoulaye Kante arrive. We bought him for £250 million. He was very much a young player who was on the radar of a number of Europe's top clubs. He chose to join Middlesbrough in order to play regular first team football, and his first season was absolutely outstanding. Second season, which was last season, wasn't quite as good. Middlesbrough's lack of form themselves, Rav's lack of form, a couple of injuries along the way sort of derailed him a little bit, and so he was sort of unable to show exactly what he was capable of. But I think as we got to the end of the season and into the summer, it became very, very clear that Rav van den Berg saw his future away from Middlesbrough. He's a player of real ambition, someone who frankly didn't seem that happy to be staying with a club who were going to be mid-table in the Championship as we were at the end of last term. And so I think for him it was the right time to move on. It was the right time for the club as well. But credit to Kieran Scott and the recruitment team. We did a really good job of getting a good transfer fee for Rav van den Berg. I think they negotiated hard over it. He's eventually now moved on to FC Koln in the Bundesliga. It's a great opportunity for him to show what he's capable of, and a great move for Middlesbrough. One where we've been able to move on a player who doesn't necessarily want to be here. We've made a huge profit on the player. I think the fee was worth around about £12 million in the end, all in. For selling him to the Bundesliga club. So a really good deal, one where we've made a huge profit based on the 250 grand that we paid a couple of seasons back. So yeah, a really good deal all round. Good luck to Rav in Germany, but yeah, that money was really quite key to unlocking Middlesbrough in this transfer window. And as we'll see in a couple of slides' time, there were some really exciting signings which were able to be made as a result of selling Rav van den Berg. Sonjay Hansen, he was the next one through the door. A really exciting signing. Someone who'd been linked with the club for a little while. I remember doing a video earlier on this summer where he was among the names that were being linked with a move to Middlesbrough, and someone who I think when you looked at the other comments on my videos, I think a lot of people were kind of thinking, yeah, this might be a little bit ambitious. I'm not exactly sure whether Middlesbrough will be able to pull off this deal, but we have been able to do it. We brought him into the club, and he's done really well in the first couple of weeks of the season. I think there's a huge amount more that we'll get to see from him. It emerged that after he'd signed for the club, he had been ill for a couple of weeks before he arrived. He made his debut against Millwall at the Den as a substitute. I think at that point he'd only trained for maybe a day or so before that. So he came in, he was quite raw, hadn't trained a huge amount, but he showed his quality in small doses at the Den. He pulled off a wonderful turn in the build-up to one of Middlesbrough's goals in the afternoon, and that was just a little bit of a glimpse of the quality that he's got on offer. He also started the match against Sheffield United at the Riverside just before the international break, and he again showed some real qualities. He's fast, he's sort of quite wiry. He's quite happy to drop into pockets and drop into space and use his pace to run at defenders. He only played half of the game against Sheffield United, but I'm quite encouraged by what we've seen from Sonjay Hansen. I think he's a player who could be really dangerous this season, and I think hopefully with the international break here, giving him the opportunity to bed in, get some match fitness and match sharpness, play under Rob Edwards a little bit in training, and really slot into the system. I'm really hopeful that between now and Christmas we can start to see a little bit more of what Sonjay Hansen has to offer. But a really exciting deal, and one which I think Middlesbrough will be very, very happy about that they were able to get secured over this summer. Adolson Malanda, this is another signing which is really, really exciting as far as Middlesbrough are concerned. Middlesbrough signed him from FC Charlotte, or Charlotte FC, in the MLS. He's someone who has a really big reputation, someone who was he was on the radar of a number of clubs in Europe. I think it was PSV Eindhoven who were also interested in signing him, but Middlesbrough have been able to secure his services on a long term deal. Now Malanda, as I said, he's with Charlotte FC in the MLS. Their season doesn't come to an end until November or December sort of time. So a key part of that deal was him staying with the MLS side to finish off the campaign. It means that Middlesbrough won't have him immediately available for selection this season. But what he will do is he will finish the season with them. He'll have a short break and then he'll be eligible to join up with Middlesbrough at the start of January. I think it'll be on January the 1st when he'll technically be available to come in and be registered and start to integrate with the squad. It doesn't necessarily mean it'll come in and be an automatic starter. It might depend on how well Charlotte do in the MLS, because if they get into the playoff rounds and that sort of thing, then it could mean that his little break that he's going to have afterwards could extend a little bit into January. But undoubtedly a really exciting signing. He's someone who's really tipped for big things. He seems like a real, quite close to a sort of finished article of a defender. He's big, he's powerful, he's fast. Someone who really just seems like the all-round package in central defence. And so I'm really excited to see a little bit more of what he has to offer when he does sign for Middlesbrough. We're starting to look quite stacked in that central defensive area. As I said before, we've got Alfie Jones, Dale Fry and Luke Ayling at centre-back at the moment. I do expect that when Adelson Malanda comes in, the plan will be for him to be one of those regular starters in that defence, because he is very much on the upward curve of his career, and I think big things are expected of him. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on, but a really exciting signing and a really big statement of ambition from Middlesbrough that they were able to pull off this deal, which could be a real masterstroke. Finn Azaz, this was one which, I think I and a lot of fans had sort of mixed feelings about. It was always going to be a real shame to lose one of Middlesbrough's top performers from last season. Finn Azaz was undoubtedly one of Middlesbrough's top performers. Got double digits for goals and assists last season. Got double digits for goals and assists the season before, with half of it being on loan with Plymouth and then joining Middlesbrough in the January of 2024. So he's been really, really good for Middlesbrough, putting some good performances, and his pedigree at Championship level is clear for all to see. But as it emerged that Southampton came in for him, it also emerged that Finn Azaz was keen to leave. He was unhappy with Middlesbrough and he wanted to move on and pursue the challenge of playing for Southampton. And ultimately, similar to Rab van den Berg, it became a case of trying to get the best deal possible for this one. So Middlesbrough negotiated hard. They were able to get the deal over the line for Finn Azaz to move on. It was worth £15 million all in. I believe it was £12 million up front with £3 million in achievable add-ons. And once again, for a player who didn't want to be at the club, it was good business. Middlesbrough only signed him for £2.5 million 18 months earlier. So the fact that we're able to make at least £10 million in profit was, really, really good business. As I said, he didn't want to be at the club, so I think ultimately you've got to make that decision to get him out. But the fact that we have been able to negotiate it and get a good fee for him has been really good as well. For Finn Azaz, he'll go to Southampton. Southampton will be one of the favourites to secure promotion this season. Obviously, it's a long season. You don't know exactly how things are going to go, but undoubtedly Southampton will be among that top cluster of teams who will be challenging for promotion, and Finn Azaz will be hoping to play a big part in that. But as part of Finn Azaz moving on, it did mean that we were able to go out and sign a couple more exciting attacking players. Sanjay Hansen had come in, and then we'll also see some of the other attacking players that we were able to bring in just to fill that void of Finn Azaz just a little bit. Sverre Nypan, this was the man that I'm talking about. This is someone who came in to replace Finn Azaz, and what an exciting signing this one was for Middlesbrough. He came in from Manchester City. He'd only signed for Manchester City this summer, arrived for £12.5 million from Rosenborg, a player who's regarded as one of the hot young prospects in European football. Man City signed him for a reason. They see him as someone who could be a real superstar in the future, and as part of his development, the plan was made for him to leave Man City on loan to a club in England to really get out there, play regular first-team football and show what you can do in the English game. And Middlesbrough, who have a good connection with Manchester City, having linked up with them on a couple of signings over the last couple of seasons with the likes of Mika Hamilton and Morgan Rogers, these kind of players, it was decided that Middlesbrough would be the best place for him to go. And I think what you've seen from him so far is a little glimpse of the sheer quality that he's got. He's technically gifted. He likes to drop into spaces. He can play as a number 8 in central midfield. He can also play further up the field as a sort of number 10 or as a wide man. And I think we're going to see a little bit more of that from him. As a result of Hayden Hackney staying, I do think that we'll probably play Nypan a little bit further forward to unlock his talent a little bit more. But we have seen it against Norwich and against Sheffield United, the quality that he does show. Great on the ball, a great passer, but also he's really tenacious. He's small, but he's really tough. He's quite stocky as well. Someone who has the real ability to put himself about. So he's a real sort of all-round threat in that midfield area. And as I said, he is very much regarded as one of the best young players in European football at the moment. So I'm very, very excited to see what he can offer over the course of this campaign. It could be a really, really big part of Rob Edwards' plans this season, and hopefully we'll get to tap into some of that potential as the season unfolds. But while I've got you, you've stuck with us this long, I just want to ask you to subscribe to the channel. A lot of you are tuning into the videos, have been really supportive over the course of the summer, which has been hugely appreciated. So thank you so much. If you are enjoying these videos, then please do hit subscribe. There's going to be plenty more content coming. I've got some really exciting plans for the channel coming up. So if you are enjoying it, please do hit subscribe. Keep tuning in because, as I said, there's going to be some really big things coming up. So stay tuned for that. Back to the video, and Matt Targett was the next player who came into the club. He arrived on a season-long loan deal from Newcastle United. His future with Newcastle was very much clear. You've got to say he had a year left on his deal with St James's Park. He wasn't going to be getting anywhere near the first team because they've got Tino Livramento and Lewis Hall who were playing there. Dan Berg can also play at left back, so it wasn't really going to happen for him. Ultimately, he got left behind in South Korea during pre-season, which probably summed up where he was at in the Newcastle pecking order, which is quite funny but quite sad for him at the same time. But he arrived on a season-long loan, and it filled a really big void in Middlesbrough's side. We were desperate to sign a left wing back this summer. It was a position which was probably among the top priorities for the club. Of course, we lost Lucas Engel in January. We had Samuel Lilling Jr. for the second half of the season on loan. He went back to Aston Villa. And so going into pre-season and the start of the campaign, we had Sami Silvera, who was slotting in there out of position, did a really good job. But not a natural left back. We had Alex Bangura, who is a natural left wing back, but someone who wasn't fully fit. He's had his injury problems and continues to do so. So I don't think we're in a position to really rely on him as far as his availability is concerned. So it was always going to be a real priority to bring in an experienced left wing back, someone who could really hit the ground running. And Matt Targett is exactly that. He came on against Sheffield United and did a really good job. Provided that assist for Tommy Conway's goal, and I think he's going to provide real quality, real steadfast defensive workmanship. I guess he's going to be a really good defender, but he's going to be really good at going forward. I think Matt Targett's very, very underrated. I think people have forgotten just how good he is. The reason that he got his move to Newcastle United from Aston Villa was because of how good he is. Someone who was probably one of the other best left backs in the Premier League outside of the top 4 or 5 clubs. And so for Middlesbrough to get him on loan, I think it's a big opportunity. He has had his injury problems over the last couple of seasons, but for Middlesbrough, if they can keep him fit, this could be a really, really exciting signing and someone who could provide a top quality level of ability to come into the side and show exactly what he's capable of doing. Well, left back was one key position that Middlesbrough needed to strengthen. A new striker was top of the list as well. Middlesbrough had really been struggling in this department since January, really. When Emmanuel Atilaf left to join Atlanta United in the MLS, I think a lot of fans thought that we would be signing a ready-made replacement to come in for him. Ultimately, that didn't happen, possibly due to the late nature in which that deal to the MLS went through. So we signed Kelechi Iheanacho on a loan deal until the end of the season. Didn't exactly go to plan. He really didn't set the world alight, but somehow has secured a move to Celtic this summer, which, is a big surprise to me. But it was always going to be a case of signing a top quality striker or two this summer. Tommy Conway did really well in pre-season and during the first few weeks of the campaign, but he needed support. He needed someone who's going to challenge him for his place, someone who's going to offer something a little bit different to Rob Edwards' side. And Kali Sene is going to do exactly that. He's come in with a big reputation, a big scoring record, and I think against Sheffield United we saw an early glimpse of what he's capable of doing. He's pacey, he's powerful. I think he's got an eye for goal. He could have got a goal against Sheffield United, had Delano Bergzorg been able to pick him out in the penalty area during that one. But I think he's a player who, similar to some of the others that we've spoken about, could take a little bit of time to adapt to life in England and in the Championship. I think he's got all of the characteristics needed to be a really big success with Middlesbrough, and someone I'm very excited to watch more of as the season unfolds. Part of Calisene coming into the club, Middlesbrough were always going to need to move on some players, and Marcus Forss felt like the person who was topping that list. It was very clear in pre-season that he wasn't part of Rob Edwards' plans. Didn't really do that well during his match against Bradford City, which was a big opportunity for him. And then when Middlesbrough took to the field against Hartlepool, playing youngsters and the so-called bomb squad, I guess Marcus Forss was one of the main players in that side, and it became very, very clear that he wasn't part of Middlesbrough's plans. Barely featured for Middlesbrough during the first few weeks of the season, and it felt like he was just someone who needed to move away to reignite his career. He's gone on loan to Bolton Wanderers, a season-long loan deal in League One. Could be exactly what he needs to reignite that career. For me, he's someone who's better than League One. I think he is a championship level player, but I think for him to be able to go out and play regular first team football, prove his fitness, get some goals under his belt could be a really, really positive thing. And for me, it'd be great to see him back to doing what he does best, scoring goals, terrorising defenders. And while that's unlikely to be with Middlesbrough, given that his contract at the club expires at the end of this season, it will be great to see him in action once again. David Strelec was one of the other blockbuster arrivals for Middlesbrough on transfer deadline day. We'd signed Calisene. He was the striker who came in to fill the void of that striker that we'd so desperately needed. But then it emerged in the media that Middlesbrough were looking for a third striker to come in. And a lot of fans weren't exactly sure who it was going to be, but who else was it going to be other than David Strelec, a player who had been on the club's radar for the best part of 12 months. He was the chosen man to replace Emmanuel Latilath in the January transfer window. Middlesbrough wanted to get the deal done. I think it was probably due to the timing of when that Emmanuel Latilath exit went through that we weren't able to get this one done. I think Slovan Bratislava were reluctant to lose their star man so close to the end of the transfer window, and you can't really blame them, I guess, really. They had their own ambitions. They don't want to lose a player who's that important, and ultimately that's why we went on to sign Kelechi Iheanacho. Now, Middlesbrough have been interested in him for a long time. It took a little while to get the deal done, but he has arrived with Middlesbrough now. I think the deal is worth around about £8.5 million all in. So a significant investment, but David Strelec is a player of real pedigree, scored a lot of goals. He's won league titles for Slovan Bratislava. He's a full international for Slovakia. He's scored plenty of goals with them. He's played in the Champions League. He is someone who, at just 24 years of age, has a lot of pedigree behind him, and someone who I think could be a real threat for Middlesbrough. He's coming into the side. He can play up front. He can also play a little bit deeper as a sort of false nine or number 10. So he will offer a bit of versatility, but I think the main thing that he will prove to bring to Rob Edwards' side is that ability to find the back of the net, and that could be so important this season. So this is a player that I'm very excited to watch more of this season. I think he's going to be very, very exciting for supporters as well, and so certainly one that I'm keen to keep an eye on as the season unfolds. A couple of outgoings now. Of course, with all the other players coming in, there was always going to be a need for players to move on, and Neto Borges was perhaps one of the surprise players to move on. He went on loan to Bristol City on a season-long loan agreement, and it was one which caught me a little bit off guard. I like Neto Borges. I think he's a really good defender, someone who showed his qualities last season. I think when he was playing at centre-back, he probably looked a little bit more comfortable than what he did when he was playing at left wing-back, but ultimately the decision was made to move him on. Now, I'm led to believe that Neto Borges was on a fairly significant wage with Middlesbrough. Not one of the top earners, but still earning a significant amount. And I think given the new arrivals in central defence, it became quite clear that he was quite far down the pecking order. I think with Luke Ayling, Dale Fry and Alfie Jones in central defence as the starting sort of players. We also had George Edmondson and Darragh Lenihan, who's on his way back from injury now. So Neto Borges was going to be sixth choice in central defence. And with Adelson Malanda joining in January as well, possibly seventh choice. So that decision was made to allow him to go out, play regular first-team football and get his wages off the bill. I think he did really well in his season with us last term. It took a little while for him to get going, but I think in the second half of the season in particular, he He really showed what he was capable of. I was a really big fan. I probably would have ideally liked him to have stuck around as a little bit of cover at centre back and at left back / left wing back. But that decision was made, and I think all the best to him. I think he's a really good player at this level, and I just hope that we don't regret letting him leave the club because of everything that he did offer, both on the pitch and off the pitch as well. Tom Glover was allowed to leave the club. His contract was ripped up. It was one which felt quite inevitable. He's never really challenged for a starting role in the team. I think when he's been in the team, I haven't really been that convinced by him. So I'm not really too surprised or upset that he's moved on. He was never really going to be challenging for the number 1 jersey. Solbrin seems to have that wrapped up. Seny Dieng is on his way back from injury now, and he'll likely be challenging him if he doesn't secure a move elsewhere. Some of the other transfer windows are still open around Europe, in Turkey in particular, so he could still secure a move away from Middlesbrough, Seny Dieng. But for Tom Glover, he was never going to be in contention. It's a World Cup year. He's going to be wanting to get some regular game time to secure his spot in Australia's squad for next summer. So it was one which sort of made sense. Allow him to move on, go and play some regular first team football. And yeah, for me, a decision which was the right one. It seemed the right time to part ways, and so good luck to Tom Glover in the next chapter of his career. Moments after Tom Glover left, Middlesbrough announced the signing of John McLaughlin, the 37-year-old goalkeeper who's previously played for Sunderland and for Rangers. Lo and behold, he'd actually been training with Middlesbrough for a number of weeks over the course of the summer, but no one really cottoned on to the fact that was actually happening. So, not a great one for Middlesbrough's in the know accounts on Twitter. But a player who comes in with real experience. He's very much going to be the third choice goalkeeper with Middlesbrough. It may be that he doesn't actually get onto the pitch, but we know really how important it is for the third choice goalkeeper in that sort of goalkeeping union. Someone who's a sort of almost a linking man between the coaching team and the players. I think John McLaughlin will do exactly that. He's a model professional, someone who's got great experience to impart. And of course, you've got to remember that Solbrin is still a very young man. He might be Middlesbrough's first choice goalkeeper this season, but he's only 24, 25 years of age, which in goalkeeping terms is very, very young. So having someone like John McLaughlin around who's going to be able to impart some real wisdom could be a real plus this season, and so a really shrewd addition, you've got to say, on deadline day. Law McCabe, the decision was made over his future, and he's gone out on loan to Plymouth Argyle for the season. It seemed like it was going to be a really big season for him. In pre-season, he did well. Started the game against Rangers. Looked like it was someone who was going to be in and around that first team squad, probably. Maybe not a starter, but someone who was going to be maybe third choice in central midfield. But I think a couple of changes might have pushed him down the pecking order a little bit. The signing of Abdoulaye Kante pushed him down the order. The fact that Hayden Hackney ended up staying with the club once again was a big blow for him. And I think the season was always going to be massive because Law McCabe needs to go out and play first team football. He was in and around Middlesbrough squad for the last season, or possibly even 2. In and around the squad, made a few appearances here and there, but he is at the stage of his career where he needs to play regular first-team football, and that's exactly what he'll get with Plymouth in League One. He'll be playing under Tom Cleverley, someone who obviously played central midfield at the highest level, so it could be a really, really good move for him to go there. He'll learn a huge amount off Tom Cleverley, maybe even a similar sort of dynamic to Hayden Hackney, learning off Michael Carrick in those sort of early days. So a great move for Law McCabe. They play really good football at Plymouth, and they're going to be challenging for promotion. So this could be a really, really good loan move for him. If he can play a key part for them, he could come back to Middlesbrough next summer in a much stronger position, and in a position to really challenge for a place in the team, which he hasn't been able to do so far. With Law McCabe moving on, there was a bit of a need for cover and experience in central midfield, and so Middlesbrough pulled off the surprise move to sign Alan Brown from Sunderland. Alan Brown is a really experienced championship-level player, 30 years old, made about 400 appearances for Preston North End over around about 10 years with the club. Most recently, he's been playing with Sunderland and helped the club to promotion last season, of course, but with them now playing in the Premier League, first-team opportunities are always going to be limited. Alan Brown wanted to play regular first-team football. He was really keen to come to Middlesbrough, and so Middlesbrough were able to pull off a season-long loan deal to bring him in, and it just seems like a really smart deal. He's 30 years of age. He'll provide real cover, real quality in central midfield, someone who'll be very, very comfortable stepping into the starting 11 as well. And he's not just an experienced head, he's got quality, he's a tough tackler, he's someone who's quite versatile as well. I think he could potentially play at right wing back as well if needed. He can also play slightly further up the field. He's got an eye for goal. He is someone who I think is a really, really solid addition. And while no one saw this one coming, I think he could prove to be a real sort of masterstroke this season and someone who could offer a huge amount to Rob Edwards' side over the course of the next 12 months. With Alan Brown coming in, it did pave the way for Dan Barlaser to leave the club, and it's not really much of a surprise. I think Dan Barlaser's time with Middlesbrough has been coming to an end for a little while now. I think a few people were surprised that he didn't leave last summer or in January because he's sort of been slipping down the pecking order. He's barely featured for the club during pre-season or during the start of the campaign, and with just 12 months left on his contract, it seemed inevitable that he was going to be moving on and that his days with Middlesbrough would be numbered. Hibbs came in for him. He's been able to secure a season-long loan move there. His contract with Middlesbrough expires next summer, so it was a great opportunity for him to go out and play some regular first-team football. It wasn't going to happen with Middlesbrough, but he is still a good player. I think he'll do well with Hibbs. Hibbs plays some good football as well. I think the Scottish Premiership will be a really good move for him, and hopefully he'll be able to go there, show his quality, and then earn potentially a long-term deal with Hibbs, but if not, a move elsewhere where he can show what he's capable of, because he is very much in his prime years. He's got a lot to offer, and while that won't be with Middlesbrough, I do think he's got a really bright career ahead of him, so good luck to Dan Barlaser moving forward. And last but not least, it's a deal which didn't happen, but that's only a good thing, and that's Hayden Hackney. Middlesbrough were able to keep hold of Hayden Hackney this summer, which was arguably the best piece of business that we did. It was almost inevitable that Hayden Hackney was going to leave this summer. I think fans expected it at the end of last term. We were expecting Premier League clubs and clubs around Europe to be coming in for him, but the only substantial offer that came in, or the only actual concrete offer, was from Ipswich Town, who offered that £20 million, which was accepted. Hackney went down to Portman Road and held talks with the club, but ultimately rejected the chance to move to Portman Road and get a hefty pay rise in the process because he didn't want to move to another club in the Championship. He decided to stay with Middlesbrough. It was always very open that he was wanting to move to the Premier League, and so had a club come in for him, it's very likely that he would have moved on. But I think the best and the biggest thing that you can say about Hayden Hackney is the way that he's conducted himself this summer has been exemplary. We've seen a lot of other players, the likes of Alexander Isak and Victor Gyökeres and Johan Visser, going on strike and refusing to play and train and really kicking up a fuss in order to force through a move. But we haven't seen any of that from Hayden Hackney. He's been a model pro. He's trained hard. He's played in pre-season. He's been brilliant in the first few weeks of the season. And it just goes to show that as well as being a quality player, he's also a quality person, a model professional, and he's really showed his class by the way that he's conducted himself this summer. I don't think anyone would blame him for wanting to play in the Premier League. I think that opportunity will come sooner rather than later. It could be in January, it could be at the end of this season. I do think he'll be there before long, whether that's with or without Middlesbrough, but ultimately the fact that he's conducted him so well will mean that when he does move on, if he moves on, he will go with the blessing of everyone at Middlesbrough, who will remember just how well he's conducted himself during these quite tricky and turbulent few months. I know that fans have been unsettled by the speculation, but it can take a huge toll on a player when there's such speculation and you're kind of wondering whether you're going to be getting a move. So the fact that he has been able to keep his head, knuckle down, and play as if nothing's bothering him on a Saturday afternoon for Middlesbrough has been a really big plus. And so hats off to Hayden Hackney. Fingers crossed he can play a big role for Middlesbrough, at least in the next few months. He is going to be a Middlesbrough player at least until January. So the best thing that we can do is try to get the best out of him during that time and then see where we're at in January to see if anyone else comes in for him. So that was my whistle-stop tour of Middlesbrough's transfer market in the summer of 2025. But I want to know what you think. Have you been happy with Middlesbrough's business that we've done this summer? Drop into the comments below. Let me know what you think. And if you have enjoyed this video, please do hit like, please do hit subscribe. And there's going to be plenty more coming up very, very soon. I'll catch you later.